Hello, second grade citizens, and welcome to lesson 13. Today, to introduce our lesson, I've invited a very special guest. His name is John F. Kennedy. Have you heard of him? Raise your hand if you've heard of him. John F. Kennedy is a famous president. He was our president from 1961 to 1963. And in 1961, he gave an inaugural address. That's a speech that you give when you're voted to become president. And he said some very powerful words that he's going to share with you right now.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Have you ever heard those famous words before? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, in today's lesson, we will be talking about something that you can do for your country when you get older. So today's lesson is an introduction to voting. And voting is something that is so important for us to do as citizens. It's our way to have a say in what happens in our country. So let's get started in talking about this important topic. We're going to be reading about the topic of voting, and we're also going to watch a short video clip on the topic of voting. We'll actually watch the video first. But before we go on to learn about voting, whenever we're learning about a topic, a nonfiction topic, like voting or any other topic, it's good to think about what background knowledge we already have. Background knowledge is what we already think we know about the topic. And sometimes what we think we know turns out to be wrong, and that's okay. That means that we're learning something new. So before we go on to learn, let's think about first what we already know. You should have this sheet in your Google Classroom if you are learning from home. If you are learning from school, your teacher will give it to you. Let's read the directions. The directions say, before reading the book, Why Voting Matters, What is Voting by Kristen Rajdak Nelson, and watching the video on voting, jot down what you already know about voting and what you want to know. After reading and watching, jot down what you learned that was new to you. Okay, so I have my copy of this activity sheet out. And I'm going to think about what I already know about voting. Can you please whisper into your hand, what do you already think you know about voting? I know that when you vote, you can choose something. All right, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. So let's jot down what we already think we know about voting. I want you to pause the video here. You're going to jot down in this spot here. I'm going to jot one thing down that I think I already know. I know that when you vote, you make a choice for someone or something. That's something I already know. Okay? And then I'm going to try to jot down maybe 2 more things that I already know. Can you see if you can jot down 3 things that you already know about voting even before we learn about it? Go ahead and do that right now. Pause this video, jot down some things that you already think you know, and then unpause it. We'll talk about what we're doing next. All right, welcome back. So here's what I jotted down. I added voting is important. That's something I think I know about voting. And that people vote on election day. That's something else I think I know. Now, after we finish this section that talks about what we think we know, we should jot down some questions that say what we want to know about this topic. So think, what do you want to know about voting? What's a question that you have? One question that I have is, how do you vote? So I'm going to write that question down. How do you vote? What are some questions that you have? See if you could come up with 3 questions that you have about voting. Pause the video here, write down your 3 questions, and then come back and unpause once you've finished. See you in a minute. Welcome back. Did you finish writing your 3 questions? If you didn't, make sure that you do so. I'll share with you the 3 questions that I came up with. So you already heard this one. How do you vote? Who can vote? And who else can we vote for besides the president? Those are 3 questions that I hope will be answered as I watch the video on voting and then read the book on voting. If you haven't finished writing your 3 questions, pause the video again here, finish writing them, and then come back. All right, so it's time for us to start learning more about voting. In just a moment, we'll be watching this video called Voting for Kids, Why Voting is Important, Election Day, and it's by the Kids Academy. So this is something cool that I like to do. Whenever I'm watching a video on a topic that is going to teach me some new things or reading about a topic that will teach me some new things, I like to put a finger up every time I hear something new. And how do we know that we are learning something new? Well, if you hear or read something and you think to yourself, aha, I didn't know that, or you're surprised by something that you heard or read, that means it's new information. And whenever you hear new information, it's like a gift of knowledge. So we want to try to keep track of those things. Once we're finished listening to this video and watching this video, we'll jot down anything new that we've heard. Maybe I will get some answers to some of the questions that I asked. Maybe some of the things I thought I knew about voting, I'll find out weren't quite right. We'll see. Okay, let's get started. Don't forget, put a finger up each time you learn something new while listening to this video.
Welcome to Kids Academy.
Hi, boys and girls. Do you know what it means to vote? When people vote, they make an important choice. What if your family couldn't decide what to eat for dinner? What could you do? Take a vote to choose a dish. What if your basketball team needs a new captain? What could you do? Take a vote. As a citizen, voting is very important. Grown-ups who are 18 and older vote when it is time to choose new leaders for a community. This could be the mayor of a city or the governor of a state. Citizens even vote for the President of the United States. Let's see what happens when people vote. On Election Day, citizens go to a special place, like a library.
Okay, I'm just going to pause right here. You might have noticed that I put a finger up when they were talking about who you can vote for. Do you remember how on my sheet I asked this question, who else can we vote for besides the president? Well, they just told me 2 other people that you can vote for. Did you hear what they said? If you heard, call it out. 3, 2, 1. The mayor and the governor. Right. So one of my questions was answered, and that was new information that I learned. After I'm done listening to this video, I'll want to be sure to write down that new learning. Let's keep listening, and remember, put up those fingers whenever you hear something that's new learning for you or new information.
Or a school gym. To vote for leaders in their community. Inside, there are many voting booths. These booths help people keep their votes private. Voters select their choices on a ballot and put it in the ballot box. Some voting booths have special computers instead of ballot boxes. After all the votes have been counted, a new leader is chosen. Let's review.
Okay, before we listen to the review, I want you to notice I put another finger up. That was when they talked about how some voting booths have computers instead of paper ballots. Whenever I've gone to vote, I've always filled out a paper ballot, so I didn't realize that you could also vote on a computer. Interesting. So that was new learning. It wasn't something I had a question about, but it was still something new that I learned. It was something that surprised me that I didn't know before. How many fingers do you have up by now? Did you learn a few new things? I hope you did. If you did, that shows that you're growing your brain and you're giving your brain more knowledge. Okay, now let's listen to the end of this video. Sounds like they'll review the things that we've learned.
People vote. They make important choices. Citizens vote for leaders such as mayors, governors, and presidents. Election Day is a special day for voting. Voters select their choices on a ballot and place it in a ballot box. The votes are counted, and a new leader is chosen. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Subscribe.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I have 2 things that I can add to my chart for what I have learned. So I'm going to go over to this section. It says, what have you learned about voting? And remember, we still have our book to read, so I want to make sure that I write small so I leave myself enough space to add more. But let's see, the 2 things that I learned. 1, I got an answer to this question. I'm actually going to write a check mark next to it because that question was answered. Maybe I'll even learn more in the book about this question. I didn't learn though, well, I learned a little bit about how do you vote, but I already knew the things that they taught me about how to vote. I feel like there's more I need to know about how to vote. And then, like, I knew that you need a ballot. I know that you vote on election day, but I feel like there are other things that I'd like to know about how you vote. And then, who can vote? They didn't really talk about that. So hopefully we'll learn about that in the book. We'll see. Okay, so now, let's see. For what have you learned, I'm going to write down the things that I learned. The first thing that I learned is you can vote for, do you remember what they said? In addition to the president, you can vote for the mayor and the governor. So you can vote for the mayor or governor. And then I'll go and I'll write down the other thing that I learned. What was it? Oh, right. They taught me how you can sometimes vote on a computer instead of using a paper ballot. So I'll write that. I want you to now pause this video and jot down anything new that you learned while listening to this video. See how many new things you can jot down. Can you come up with at least 1 thing? Maybe 2, maybe even 3. When you're finished jotting down your new learnings, come back. We'll talk about what we're doing next. Welcome back, second graders. Did you finish filling in this part? What have you learned about voting? I wrote the two things that I learned about voting. And the second thing I wrote is, in some places you can vote by computer. I didn't know that before. So make sure that you filled in what you have learned. And if you're finished, we can move on. If you're not finished, pause the video again, finish up, and then come back when you're done. All right, now before we go on to reading our book about voting, we're going to do a little stretching activity. This is called Own Your Power, and it is a Go Noodle. Now, in this activity, the instructor asks us to yell the word "ha" at certain points. Instead of doing that, I want you to please just do the movements, but do them quietly. And this is for two reasons. Number one, if we're yelling, we're spreading our germs, and we don't want to do that because we're not all far enough apart from each other if we're in school. And number two, if you're in school, you don't want to be so noisy that you disrupt other classes. Okay, so if you're in school, I want you to please do this, but do it quietly. You may stand up, push in your chair, stand behind your chair, and let's get started. I really thought that this Go Noodle was appropriate because one way to own your power as a citizen is to vote.
You have an amazing strength that comes from deep inside of you. It lives in your body and also in your heart and in your mind. Sometimes you might forget how strong you really are, but you can always bring power back into yourself by using your breath and your body. Stand and separate your feet a bit wider than your hips. Point your toes out just a little and bend your knees. Noticing how your legs are feeling. Are they working hard? If you want to feel them working a little bit harder, bend your knees a bit more. Now reach your arms out in front of you, open your hands wide, and breathe in. Then quickly pull your arms back, close your fist, and say, "Ha!" in your strongest voice. Let's try it together. Inhale, "Ha!" Now reach your arms overhead, open your hands wide, and breathe in. Pull your arms in, close your fist, and say, "Ha!" Check in with your legs again. How are they feeling? Are they working hard? Feeling tired? You can bend them a little bit more or straighten them a bit. It's totally up to you. So let's turn up the power. Reach your arms out, take a big breath in through your nose, and ha, 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 ha. Switch. Ha, 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 ha. Switch. Ha, ha, ha. Switch. Ha, ha, ha. Switch. Ha, switch. Ha, switch. Ha, 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 ha. So let's bring one hand to your heart and one hand to your belly. Find a steady breath through your nose and check in with your body. How are your legs feeling? Did you notice them being tired or working hard while you were practicing this activity? How is your heart feeling? Is it strong? Is it tired? Energized? Whatever your heart is feeling, consider sending it a quick thank you for working so hard to support your body. Straighten your legs and bring your feet close together. Close your eyes or rest them on one spot on the ground in front of you. Keep one hand on your heart and one on your belly. Inhale and exhale through your nose. Bring your arms down to your sides and open up your eyes. When something challenging is coming up in your life and you forget how strong you really are, you can power up with this activity. If you can't do it right in the moment you need it, bring your mind back to the strength you were feeling in your body while you were doing it today. Have a powerful day.
Wow, that sure did feel good, didn't it? You know, sometimes when we're doing a lot of learning, it's really important for us to give ourselves a little brain break, maybe a little movement break or a little meditation. It helps us to learn more. Now that I did that movement activity, not only do I feel more powerful, but I also feel ready for more learning. Are you ready too? Give me a double thumbs up if you are. Great. Okay, now it's time for us to read this book, Why Voting Matters. What is Voting? By Kristen Rozak Nelson. This book is packed full of information, so you'll really want to put your thinking cap on. Get that thinking cap, put it on your head, and get ready for some learning. Remember, whenever you learn something new from this book, put up a finger. I wonder how many fingers we'll have up by the end of this book. The right to vote. One of the benefits of being a citizen of the United States is the promise of exercising certain rights. The U.S. Constitution and its amendments state these rights. One of the most important is the right to vote. Many Americans view this as a civic duty and take great pride in it. So did you know that voting is one of our rights? If you didn't know that, you should put a finger up. And did you know that people consider voting their civic duty? If you didn't know that, you should have another finger up. Remember, anytime you learn something new, put a finger up so that you'll remember. Make a choice. When members of a group of people each make a choice and each person's choice is counted, that's voting. You may have voted by simply raising your hand in class to pick what movie to watch. Some TV shows let fans call in, text, or visit a website to vote for winners each week. It's official. When people talk about voting, they most often mean making an official choice for a government leader. When many people vote at the same time, it's called an election. Voters visit polling places during elections. Polling places are buildings such as churches and fire stations where people gather to vote. Interesting. You know, I knew that people vote in schools, but I didn't know that people can vote in churches and fire stations. So I'm gonna put a finger up for that one. Kinds of ballots. At a polling place, voters use a ballot to make their choice. Ballots can be made of paper. Paper ballots are counted by hand or read by a machine. In some states, voters use computers to cast their vote. Voters press a button or touch the screen to make their choice. So here I'm even learning more about voting on a computer. So I'm going to put another finger up. In the video, I learned that you can vote on a computer. But now I know a little bit more about how that's done, that voters press a button on the screen to make their choice. I didn't know if maybe they had to type in their choice or how that works. Now I know they have to press a button. So now I have two fingers up, two new things I've learned so far. Becoming a voter. U.S. voters must be citizens who turn 18 years old on or before the next election day. They also must be registered to vote. In order to register in a state, a person needs to live in that state for a certain amount of time. The amount of time is different from state to state. So now I'm going to put a third finger up because this answered my question about who can vote. Citizens have to be 18 years old before the next election day in order to vote. When to vote. Most people vote on the day of an election. Many states allow people to vote before that too. Early voting helps more people vote in an election. They might even be able to vote weeks ahead of the election. The rules about early voting are different from state to state. Oh, here I'm learning something new, and this is important. This answers my question a little bit about how do you vote, because, I was wondering, I don't know if you know this about me, but I am going to have a baby very soon. So I was worried that what if I have my baby on election day and I'm not able to vote? So I should look into early voting. So that sort of answers my question on how do you vote. I thought there may be other ways to vote besides going to a polling place on election day. And now I've learned that you can vote early. Absentee voting. Every state gives out ballots to people who can't vote the day of the election. This may be because they live outside their home state. These are called absentee ballots. U.S. citizens living in other countries and people in the military often vote by absentee ballot. It's still voting even though the voters aren't there in person. I'm going to put a fifth finger up. So this means that there's another way that you could vote. This answers more of my question on how do you vote. If you can't be there in person because maybe you're out of the country or you're not in your state, you can mail in your vote. I wonder if I'd be able to mail in my vote if I need to. I'm going to have to look into that, but that's something important that I learned. That's a fifth thing that I've learned. Oh my goodness, I'm learning so much. My brain is just growing. How many things have you learned so far? Hold up your fingers to show me how many new things you've learned. Awesome. Let's see if we can learn even more. Primary elections. Before a major election, such as a presidential election, some states have special kinds of elections called primaries. In a primary election, voters choose one person from each political party to run in the larger election. In some states, people can only vote in primary elections if they belong to a political party. People commonly vote in a primary in the same way they do in other elections. This is interesting information. You might have put a finger up for this. This was something that I knew about, but this might be new to you. So have you ever wondered how our candidates get chosen to be our candidates? Like this year, Joe Biden is our candidate on the Democratic ticket for president. How did he get there? Well, there were primaries held throughout the country, and people voted for who the Democratic candidate would be. Isn't that so interesting? So there are elections held before the general election. In the general election, that's when we choose our, in this case, president. Count for the win. After voters send in their absentee ballots or go to a polling place, votes are counted. Most often, the person who receives the most votes is the winner. In this way, voters choose many people who serve in government, such as mayors, members of Congress, and local representatives. I could put up a sixth finger here. This is telling me even more people that can be voted in besides the president. In addition to mayors, members of Congress and local representatives can be voted in. Voters' voices. Voters never have to pay to vote. All voting is done in secret. Though most citizens over age 18 have the right to vote, some people choose not to vote. No one is forced to vote. Voting is important because it gives citizens a say in who will speak for them in government. And here is a glossary of all of the bold words from throughout this book. So if you wanted to learn what the definitions of any of those words are, you could read through this glossary to help you. All right, now I sure have a lot to add to this section here. What have you learned about voting? I learned so much more from this book. You might have noticed I changed the color of my pen. You could do that too. Whatever color you just wrote in, maybe you wrote in a pencil, then maybe choose a pen. Or if you wrote in a blue pen, maybe next write in a black pen. Or if you wrote in a black pen, maybe next choose a pencil. But change whatever it is that you're writing with so that we can show our new learning when we went on to read this book. Okay, so one thing that I learned, let's see, maybe I can add on to this. It says you can vote for the mayor or governor. And I'm going to also add the mayor. I'm going to put a little caret here. That tells me I'm adding more. You can vote for the mayor, comma. What did I find out? Oh, that's right. Members of Congress. Members of Congress, comma, representatives, comma, or governor. Okay. And then in some places you can vote by computer. I want to add on to this. What did I learn? You press a button to make a choice. Okay, and then there were brand new things that I learned too. Like I learned more to answer this question, how do you vote? So I can add, you can vote early or by mail-in ballot. And I also learned the answer to this question, who can vote? Do you remember who can vote? What we learned about that? Yes, any citizen who's over 18 years old can vote. So I'm going to add that. Now I'm going to go on and try to add in all of my new learnings. I want you to do the same thing. However many fingers you had up, see if you could jot down something for all of those new things that you learned. And if you need help remembering, you can always look back at the book, right? So in this case, you could rewind the video, or you could even pull up the book that we read is in Epic. You could pull it up yourself and reread it yourself. I'm going to pause here. I want you to do the same. Pause here. Go ahead and fill in this section, adding more in a different color. And I'll meet you back here when you're all done. Come back and unpause when you're finished. Welcome back, everyone. Oh my goodness. I added so much that I almost had to go on to the back of this page. Look at all that I added. I added, you vote early. You can vote early or by mail. You must be a citizen who is 18 years old or older to vote. And you can vote in a church or a fire station. That's where they sometimes have polling places, right? All right, last but not least, you have some homework, but this homework is really for your parents or any adult, really. It says parent interview, but you can interview any adult who has voted. The first question says, why do you think it is important to vote? So you're going to ask them why they think it's important to vote, and then you'll write down your answer. Then I want you to come up with 2 of your own questions. What else do you want to know about their experience with voting? What they think about it, how they voted, how they choose the candidate that they voted for, if they vote in the primary elections, if they vote for governors, whatever you'd like to ask about voting. Come up with your 2 other questions, ask them to your parent or another adult who has voted, and then you're going to turn this into your teacher. It was so much fun learning with you all today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.